immigrants.
It's like asking how many illegal weapons are out there, how much illegal cigarettes is out there. By its nature, it is illegal. And therefore, it's not something that comes forward and says, detect me, find me. An example, Chair, the issue of the Libyans who came into this country. We are talking there about handwritten paper visas that someone was able to use with their pen, pick up this pen and write in that you can come into this country. The applications in some cases were not even complete. There was not a specific selection of, I want this kind of visa. And yet, because
Honorable Minister, paragraph 9 of the white paper states that the department has no idea as to how many illegal immigrants are in South Africa, while paragraph 103 states that the sheer number of illegal foreigners in the country makes it impossible to detect all of them. Considering this, what are the expected outcomes and measures the white paper seeks to put in place in terms of clamping down on the influx of illegal immigrants at the local government? Thank you.
Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed. This is an issue that is really of great concern. It's like asking how many illegal weapons are out there, how much illegal cigarettes is out there. By its nature, it is illegal. And therefore, it's not something that comes forward and says, detect me, find me. By its nature, it seeks to evade detection and the law. But that is exactly why we have to focus on this area. We have to build systems to detect. We have to make sure, in fact, that we have continuous ability to track and monitor and audit the number of illegal immigrants in South Africa. And there's really only one way to do this, Chair. You have to build an integrated system that is able to scan any document that someone may present to you, is able to detect whether that's a fraudulent document, and in the case of it not being a fraudulent document, is able to link with various other databases to check whether this person may have a criminal record or anything of that kind. And so that's where the big focus for us really lies, so that we build those systems, including by using the technology that's available in the year 2024 to be able to detect fraudulent documents, for example, much more rapidly. I would point out the recent case we had with the Miss SA issue. I mean, there's a case that dates back 23 years, and you cannot believe the amount of resources required to actually investigate and verify some of these things, because these were, even then, of course, more paper-based, more manual processes even than they are today. And so that just consumes a huge amount of resources. If we want to efficiently clamp down on illegal immigration, if we want to understand the scale and the extent of the problem, given that these are not people that come forward and say, please detect me, we're going to have to really invest very aggressively in building the technology to help us do that. And as I said, that's really part of the commitment.
Thank you, Minister. I hear you saying, you want to get the process absolutely right. And while we are cognizant of the fact that the process for the white paper is underway, it must be concluded this year, but then of course the bill will come much later. But given the significant challenges currently faced by our country in managing immigration, including border management issues that include security, illegal immigration, and the processing of asylum seekers, how does the timeline that you speak about for the development and implementation of the proposed overhaul align with the urgent need for these reforms? And furthermore, Minister, can you give definitive assurances to South Africans of the interim measures in place to address these pressing concerns while the white paper and the bill processes are underway? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. You're welcome within your 2 minutes to take a bite at both cherries.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think it's an important issue. We can't wait, obviously, for a particular piece of legislation to pass and then deal with problems. So there is a huge amount of work that we have started doing and that will follow as the months progress to make sure that we put in place exactly the kind of system that I'm talking about. So, in fact, a bill, and we've seen this so many times in our country, you can write a piece of legislation, you can write an excellent bill. The question is, how are you able to implement it? If we're talking in this bill about our ability to monitor movement at the borders, You can write the sentence, let's monitor movement at the borders. How are you actually going to do that? Especially in a context, Honorable Chair, where the Border Management Authority is underfunded by 4.3 billion rand. You hear that correctly, 4.3 billion rand. When you are dealing with an environment in Home Affairs that's got 40% of the staff component that it requires. So there's just no way that we must believe, as important as legislation is and these reforms are, that that alone is going to solve the problem. So we are very focused on the administration side, on the systems building side. And for that, we are currently in conversation with various stakeholders, people who can assist us with capacity, and we are looking very closely at how we can reform our internal processes to make sure that we start moving away from these vulnerable systems. I mean, again, just to use a recent example, Chair, the issue of the Libyans who came into this country, we are talking there about handwritten paper visas that someone was able to use with their pen, pick up this pen and write in that you can come into this country. The applications in some cases were not even complete. There was not a specific selection of, I want this kind of visa. And yet, because human discretion allows for people to make these decisions, in some cases at the whim, they were able to issue those documents. And noting further in this case that was actually an official from DIRCO. Why is that happening? We are reliant on a department like DIRCO because we don't have enough staff. So you really
Thank you,
are
Minister.
and we want to deal with that. Thank you.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ghana.
Honorable Minister, there's the first safe country principle for asylum seekers. Do you believe that this is a principle worth pursuing? The first safe country principle. Do you believe that it is a principle worth pursuing for this country, and what are you going to do to ensure that it's realized? And secondly, do you believe that what we are dealing with in South Africa, it's a question of true asylum seekers, or we are dealing with economic migrants? Thank you.
The Minister.
I note the two cherries again, Chair, but it's fine. Just on the second part of the question, Honourable Member, we have to have systems in place to differentiate between the two. There's certainly, undoubtedly, too many cases of economic migrants who claim asylum, for example, when they would be arrested. And so we must differentiate from those cases and genuine asylum cases. But the principle there is correct, the first safe country principle. And this requires international coordination, because the truth is, if someone crosses 6-7 borders in order to get to South Africa, and some of those countries would be classified as safe, then we're sitting with a problem because we can't eventually take on the whole world's problem. We have to coordinate with international partners to make sure that that principle is actually applied. And so that's why I think there's an important conversation to be had globally as well, with partners at the UN, for example, to say we know the world is dealing with various crises. We've got wars, we've got conflicts, we've got migration issues everywhere, but you can't just leave Africa and forget about migration in this continent, and specifically in the case of South Africa as a big receiver. And so I think we're going to have to do more in this administration to put pressure internationally as well and say you're going to have to come to the table, enforce those kind of principles as we go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, interesting, guys. What do you think? We'll dive quickly into this report. I found a report on IOL News that actually spoke about how, the Home Office, Leon Schreiber, Home Office generally is actually doing to really clamp down on illegal foreigners in South Africa, illegal immigrants, actually. So it says Home Office cracks down on illegal immigrants in Cape Town, okay? And there's a really interesting picture there with five illegal immigrants that Home Office actually has clamped down. It actually argues here, the report says that Home Office Leon Schreiber's directives for officials to remove illegal immigrants from the streets is making headway in Cape Town, okay? So it says that according to the city, over the past few weeks, the department conducted several operations with law enforcement and police to operationalize its mandate, okay? And it says that MACO member for safety and security, JP Smith, said that last week, Home Affairs officials, which was supported by members of the city's law enforcement, they actually followed up on information about undocumented persons living in the District 6 in Cape Town, all right? And following that that operation, Smith actually, this is now Home Office, he actually argues that Home Affairs team, they conducted another tracing operation yesterday, descending on the area in Cape Town here, District 6, along the N1 between Pardine Island and Woodstock, okay, where several informal structures had been erected, allegedly to house undocumented immigrants. So in this area in Cape Town, there are these really illegal structures that are actually set up, you see, informal sectors, structures to house undocumented immigrants. And, you know, this is one of the areas where I'll be making a series of videos on him, Dean Macpherson, Minister of Public Works. You know, he speaks about how these informal structures, these illegal structures that are actually subject to extortions and, you know, what he calls the construction mafia have actually been, you know, the vehicles that have actually been promoting illegal immigration. That's where most illegal immigrants stay. You know, they actually find a base or home in those structures. And so by trying to eliminate those buildings, this might be one way to track. So it appears that these ministers have to work hand in hand. Leon Schreiber from Home Office would actually have to get ready, you know, as these informal buildings might, you know, face demolition or whatever. The illegal immigrant that might actually be finding refuge in these buildings would then, you know, be shipped then to Home Office to allow for this flow of a crackdown on illegal immigration. So in this issue here, in this case, it was actually an informal structure in Cape Town here that was actually, you know, the subject for the clamping down of these illegal immigrants. So it actually says that Minister Schreiber and the city of Cape Town and the city, they actually had made good progress working together. Last week, it says that there was a large operation in District 6. And actually also the next morning, they actually conducted another big operation, you know, by Home Affairs. And it says that they worked the length of the N1 close to town, where there were lots of structures along the side of the road, most of which were occupied by foreign nationals. So it appears that foreign nationals in South Africa actually stay in this, you know, buildings along the road, and that's where they found you know, a refuge or home to stay and all that, which is quite a really dangerous one, because, you know, these guys are subjected to terrible weather, gang crimes and all that, yet they still flock into South Africa. So for me, that's really surprising. But anyway, it argues, the report also says that as a result of the operation of Home Affairs, 34 people were arrested yesterday for not having relevant documentation or up-to-date permits to be in the country. You see, while another 72 people were surveyed. So it actually reports that also out of the 72 that were surveyed, 40 of these 72 were undocumented men and 32 were women who actually are now in the process of facing deportation from South Africa. So you see, Home Affairs has been busy. Schreiber has been really busy. The report says that Schreiber has actually been vocal also about focusing the department's effort on holding undocumented persons living in the country accountable. And meanwhile, speaking at the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs in Parliament, Schreiber stressed, and this is this video I just made now, he actually stressed that he will be working tirelessly to revitalize the Department of Home Affairs to ensure that it becomes more digitally based to safeguard national security. And if you remember, during the speech in this video you just watched, you could hear that, you know, one of the ways in which the Libyan officials, the Libyan, you know, paramilitary operatives that actually were found I think it was 3 weeks ago, they were actually found with, he argues that they were given handwritten visas, you see, to get into the country. And as a result of the fact that this lack of digitalization to find whoever enters the country, you know, one way or the other, is actually making South Africa's borders porous. And I remember I saw a really interesting video this morning, I think in the United States, you see, where it appears that I think there was a state that you do not even necessarily need your passport to cross. Now they do facial recognitions, and, you know, in going in and out of the country, it's now by facial recognition. So I don't know. One guy said he tried to manipulate or try to play with the settings of the camera by trying to put on glasses, different glasses, but the equipment actually, got his face right, and that was stored digitally in a database. And so this kind of digitalization systems actually help, although many people might argue that there are pros and cons to them in terms of, privacy and all that. But at the end of the day, in such a country like South Africa that's faced with a lot of massive gang crime, illegal immigration and all that, I actually would support that, the system in Home Affairs has to be digitalized in my country. And I know there's a comment on my last video by one of you who actually tried to make a mockery of me, saying that I'm so interested in South Africa's politics, and why don't I focus on my country's politics? Well, and he was actually asking what country I'm from. So I'm actually going to be responding to him. I'm actually from Nigeria, originally from Nigeria. I'm an academic, and I'm really studying South African democracy. And I actually believe in South Africa. I believe in the systems of South Africa. I believe in the multiracial and multicultural setting in South Africa. And I really believe in the potential of South Africa to be a really powerful force for change in this world. And so that's why most of the time I'm really passionate about studying South Africa. And so that's the reason why my channel here is dedicated on South Africa, democracy, politics, and all of that. And my job is actually to just help create a space where we can all discuss about most of the issues that are actually plaguing South Africa, and actually help probably the world understand South Africa better. So that's why I'm doing this, and I hope you are able to understand why Kwasemi actually runs. But anyway, the objective here is that, in trying to really secure the borders in South Africa, I think that, the whole thing with digitalization is actually one of the ways in which this whole issue with illegal immigration, porous borders, the one Gaten McKenzie argues, especially when he was campaigning for PA, the Limpopo River crossings and all that. I know that's another big project that might need a wall per se, but the idea of what passes through Home Affairs, especially if these raids are continuously being done daily in different cities, the digitalization process would actually help to be able to track and trace who is actually in the country, who enters the country, and what actually help investigations, especially like in Chidima's case, for example. I know there's been a lot of brawl between Nigerians and South Africans, that Chidima won the Miss Universe in Nigeria, and how her mother actually left South Africa to Nigeria, even though their investigation is ongoing at the moment. So these are kind of like the porosities that actually exist in Home Affairs that needs a lot of work. And I know it takes time, because this porosity has actually been there for 30 years. The ANC has been there for 30 years, and this should have been a long time to fix all of these things. But I really do not understand if probably there was a lack of insight or future thinking on the part of the Minister of Home Affairs, series of Home Affairs ministers under the ANC. But that's why I say it might be a lot of pressure and work for Leon Schreiber. But within these 5 years of the government of national unity, GNU ministers have really been trying to prove their best to show that they're really ready to work and really outwork the former ANC members and show South Africa what's really possible to achieve in 5 years. And so we're really hoping and crossing thumbs for Leon Schreiber in his pursuit of digitalization of Home Affairs in South Africa, and hopefully we see how the whole impact that would have on illegal immigration in South Africa. But anyway, what do you guys think about his speech and his responses to the questions here in the Parliament? Share your thoughts in the comments.